Everyone, my name is Henry Lliguicota-Lema, and so for the Q&As, I'll be doing those at the end of the presentation. Uh, but I can start. Yeah, thank you all for coming to my session today. As I said, my name is Henry Lliguicota-Lema, and today I'll be presenting Unlocking Your Story, The Invisible Burden of Stigma and How a Kid from New Jersey Broke Out. I'd first like to start off with a brief introduction of myself. So, as I said, my name is Henry Lliguicota-Lema. I currently live in the Los Angeles area, but I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm a full-time engineer at Honeywell Aerospace, but outside of engineering, I'm a very passionate speaker and advocate on mental health and violence prevention, and that's why I'm here speaking to you all today. I'm a youth advisor for Young Invincibles, which is a national youth advocacy and policy nonprofit, and I'm also a youth advisor for OK Today, a global youth mental health initiative. Now I'll dive deeper into my personal story in the next slides. So before I kind of move on to my story, I did want to take a moment to know a bit more about people in the audience. So I do have a quick activity. There's a QR code, and there's also a website that you could join using the code. So I'll leave that up for a minute. Okay, let's see. It looks like we have 4 community leaders, nonprofit professionals, mental health professionals or clinicians, family member, caregiver, policy, government, or systems professional. Yeah, so it's great to kind of get an idea of like the different background that the people in the audience have. So um, it's great to have you guys all here. Let me continue. So I do want to show kind of a brief presentation, kind of a brief overview of what my presentation will be. And so I'll start off with my story about trauma, identity, and resilience, then move to the hidden toll and talk about the student mental health crisis. Then in the third section, I'll give some time to talk about breaking the cycle with ACEs and generational trauma. And then in the last section, I'll end with healing forward to redefine strength and to discuss community-based solutions. Well, let's start with my story. Now, I've split my story up into 4 different parts. I'll first share my childhood trauma as a child survivor of domestic violence and abuse, then talk about how that impacted me and led to mental struggles with depression and anxiety, and then how that kind of eventually started me on my journey to start therapy and to prioritize my mental health, and eventually being pushed to kind of get involved with advocacy through speaking and community engagement. Now, before I start, I do want to give a trigger warning for domestic violence. So, I I grew up in a dysfunctional household shaped by resilience, silence, fear, and survival. My parents, they immigrated from Ecuador to New York City in the 90s, and they carried with them cultural norms where domestic violence, alcoholism, and machismo were common and rarely questioned. And so my father, like many men in my family, was both an alcoholic and a domestic abuser. Now, growing up in New York City, he was arrested multiple times, but each time he was released and found a way back into our lives. When I was just 2 years old, my mom, older sister, and I fled our home in New York City and stayed with an aunt in New Jersey. But even there, safety was temporary. My mom eventually took us to a nearby women's shelter where we lived for over 2 years. That shelter gave us stability, but it didn't stop the cycle. Through manipulation, my father did re enter our lives, and soon after, my little brother was soon born, and the abuse continued. Now, when I was 6, I remember being hit on the back for not finishing my food, and I went to school with a mark on my back. And after telling my teacher about the pain, my father was arrested again. He was soon released and stopped being physically violent, but the emotional abuse toward my mom didn't end. In 2016, my parents finally divorced, but the trauma didn't leave with him. The emotional scars on my body, my memory, and my identity remained. Since then, I've dealt with several mental challenges. I carry a deep sense of abandonment and loneliness rooted in my father's absence during the years when I needed him most. As a result of the abuse, I struggle with childhood memory loss and anxiety. There's many moments where it's like I noticed that my brain kind of buried a lot of those early years to protect me, but in doing so, it did steal part of my life. And it does feel like I'm missing that part because it's really hard to kind of remember those moments. And with no real sense of security at home, I did hope that school would be better, but it wasn't. For most of my life, I was obese. In middle school, I was bullied constantly for my weight, and it shattered my self esteem. Even after losing the weight in college, I still battle with body dysmorphia and self consciousness. While feeling unsafe at home and school, I built emotional walls around myself and stopped opening up to people. Avoided speaking in class, I avoided connection, I avoided vulnerability. I carried my trauma silently through high school and into college. Perhaps my lowest point came during my freshman and sophomore years. I had moved from New Jersey to Ohio in 2020, far from family, far from friends, and the pandemic only deepened my isolation. I spent most of my time alone in my room, scared to trust, scared to reach out. But in the spring of my sophomore year, something shifted. I found the courage to seek therapy, and that decision changed everything. Now, here I do have some notes that I did write myself in 2022 around the time that I started therapy. This first one says, reach out. You're not alone. You can do this, but you must take the first step to reach out for help. Now, this one was really a call for help because I knew I was at a point where I couldn't deal with all the trauma, with all the struggles on my own. I knew that I had to take that step to reach out. And this second note is from February 2022, and it's after my first ever therapy session. Dear future self, I hope everything has gone well. Today, I'm still dealing with several issues. I started going to counseling to deal with our trauma, and I'm feeling hopeful and scared. I really hope I can learn to cope with my issues and open up more with family and friends. Now, reaching out for help took a lot of courage for me. I had reached a point where my mental struggles weighed too much on me, and I knew that I could no longer ignore them. The stigma on mental health in my community, especially as a Latino man, was a big reason why I was scared of reaching out, why I felt like there was no one I could turn to. I'm really grateful for the free and accessible care I received through my university, both in person and virtually. It was the first time that I felt like someone was truly listening. The journey hasn't been easy. Therapy forced me to confront my traumas that I had buried for years. But slowly, I began dismantling the emotional walls I built to protect myself. I started letting people in bit by bit. At one point, I thought I was nearing the end of my recovery, but healing from trauma isn't linear, it's ongoing. Some days I still feel like a prisoner to my own mind. I overthink everything and I put myself down. I question whether I'm good enough, whether I'm man enough, and that internal battle creates stress and anxiety that I'm still learning to manage. In the summer of 2023, things caught up with me. I started having trouble sleeping, and in August, I experienced two panic attacks within the span of a week. Now, they weren't the first time that I had dealt with panic attacks, but they were the first that I chose to face instead of ignore. That summer, I was in LA for an internship, farther than ever from my family, and at that time, I had also lost both of my maternal grandparents. I lost my grandpa in March of 2023 and my grandma in June of 2023 while I was in LA during my internship. Now, kind of the loss of my grandparents had a big impact on me, and I hadn't fully processed the grief. I was doing so much that summer that I forgot to take care of my mental health, and all the emotions that I had been suppressing hit me at once. But this time, I didn't go through it alone. I reached out to my older sister, who was across the country, and she helped me calm down. She helped me feel seen, and she also shared that she struggles with panic attacks and anxiety. Now, that moment reminded me that healing doesn't have to be solitary. In the days that followed, I started reflecting deeply on my own personal journey. Despite everything, I was proud to be the second in my family to go to college through my older sister, proud of the internships that I'd earned, proud of the growth I'd fought for. But I also knew that I couldn't forget where I came from. Growing up, I didn't have people around me who talked about mental health or violence prevention. So I made a commitment to prioritize my well being, to break the mold, and to use my story to educate, inspire, and uplift my community. With this newfound determination, I began stepping into advocacy during my senior year of college. I started opening up, sharing my trauma and mental health journey publicly for the first time. In September of 2023, I spoke out at my university's Domestic Violence Survivor Speak Out event. Here, there's a clip from that event that a friend took of me. That was the first time that I ever talked about that experience, talked about the trauma, talked about what I dealt with growing up. And it was terrifying. I was in a room full of strangers, and I was the only man speaking. I doubted whether I belonged, whether my story mattered, but I knew my voice could help break cycles of silence. And after speaking, I felt relief. I no longer had to hide my pain. People came up to me, applauding my courage, and for the first time, I felt proud for using my voice. That moment opened up the doors to two powerful opportunities. The first was with the No Abuse program, where I became a peer leader teaching middle school and high school students about teen dating violence prevention. I led presentations on healthy relationships, abusive behaviors, consent, emotional regulation, topics we don't discuss enough with the youth. And it was really a great experience having that opportunity to go to middle schools and high schools in the Cleveland area and talking to students, to young students. Through this role, I also had the opportunity to attend the 2024 Ohio Domestic Violence Network's Advocacy Day and the 2 Days in May conference hosted by the Ohio Attorney General. Those two experiences were amazing because I was able to surround myself and learn from so many advocates and survivors doing incredible work across the state. The second opportunity was with It's On Crew. This was an on campus initiative that focused on sexual assault prevention. Through it, I also led presentations, hosted events, and helped build a safer, more informed campus community. And that was another way to kind of just show the importance of peer education because it was really college students teaching other college students, talking about how we can deal with trauma, how to support one another, and the different resources that we have around us. And through that opportunity, I also attended the 2024 Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence Advocacy Day during Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Now, these experiences showed me the power, as I said, of peer education. They reminded me that starting these conversations, especially with teens and young adults, is essential. After graduating college in May of 2024, I knew I didn't want to leave my voice behind. I wanted to stay rooted in community and keep pushing for change. In 2024, I led my first conference session at the 2024 School Success Conference, sharing my story and speaking on student mental health. Now, it was incredible. For the first time, I saw how my lived experiences could shape systems and empower others. From there came a big transition, moving to LA in August of 2024 to start my full time job. But even with that shift, I stayed committed to advocacy. Since September of 2024, I've been involved with Young Invincibles, first through their Young Advocates program, and now as a California Youth Advisor. It's been eye opening to learn about policy advocacy, community organizing, and how young adults can drive real change in government. In July, I became a youth advisor for OK Today, a global youth led collective changing how we talk about mental health. We're building peer to peer support systems and creating spaces where it's normal to show up for our full selves, whether we're okay or not okay. My focus is on uplifting young men and Latino communities, showing that vulnerability is strength and that healing is possible when we support each other. Now, September brought two powerful speaking opportunities. First, at the National Training Institute in Orlando, I shared my journey from survivor to advocate, exploring trauma, masculinity, and healing with hundreds of professionals. Then, at the Hispanic Mental Health Conference in Dallas, I led a session on unmasking machismo, diving into how cultural silence and generational trauma impact Latino men's mental health, and how we can reclaim empathy, community, and resilience. All of these advocacy spaces have allowed me to connect with so many like minded individuals, advocates, survivors, and change makers. They remind me that young adults are making powerful impacts in their communities and across the world. And in my community, I know I have a role to play, to lend my voice and to lead conversations on mental health and violence prevention, just like I'm doing today. So now that I had a chance to share my story and my experience with mental health, I do want to dive deeper into how mental health impacts students. Before I do go into deeper details, I do want to open the space and allow the people in the audience to kind of reflect on your own experiences and definitions of mental health. And so the question is, what does mental health mean to you? So this should be on the same website that you were on before. So it's the same QR code and the same code. Leave it up for a bit. Yeah, so I do have the QR code here again and the code from menti.com. If anyone wants to share, coping, healthy, necessary part of health, engaging in life, healthcare, Self-care. Yeah, very important. Thriving, coping skills, self-awareness, connecting, necessary, community, growth and change. Yeah, this is all great. So we do kind of understand the importance of mental health, this space, and that's why it's really important that we talk about the way that it impacts students, especially at an early age, so that we can prevent a lot of the issues that happen as they get older. Now, did you know that 1 in 5 US adults live with a mental health condition? Now, in most cases, this does start at the young ages before adulthood. And so there are some worrying stats. 40% of high school students experience persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 1 in 3 experience poor mental health, and 1 in 5 seriously consider attempting suicide. Now, it is also crucial that we do highlight that there are diverse populations. And it is found that female and the LGBTQ plus students are more likely than their peers to experience persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, poor mental health, and suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Here we can see the differences in demographics for students with depressive symptoms and who've attempted suicide. Now, from these charts, we do see that uh, females and the LGBTQ plus community have the highest rates. And I do think that it's important to note that although females have attempted suicide more than males, additional data does show that males commit suicide 4 times more than females. So that's not another piece of information, kind of the silent data, because many times these kind of statistics might be underreported or underdiagnosed because of that stigma, and which is a big reason why people are scared of reaching out and scared of talking about mental health. Now, some barriers to mental health care include problem recognition, recognizing that there is a problem, the reluctance to seek help, and the struggle to overcome that, the financial accessibility is we are at a time where it has been difficult to find affordable services or kind of dealing with healthcare and the way that that covers therapy. It is a struggle for many. Overcoming stigma on mental health, like as I talked about, there are a lot of communities where that stigma still exists. And then also the diverse needs and the lack of services for diverse populations. And so when we talk about mental health as it impacts students, it is important that we know that we talk about the school environment because it really does matter. When students feel seen, they feel safe. Students who feel connected to their school are less likely to experience depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts. Positive school climate leads to safety, belonging, and trusted relationships. Trauma informed practices improve both mental health and academic outcomes. Now, there is a silence gap. 50% of youth with mental health conditions don't receive treatment. And this is caused by the fear of being judged, not knowing where to go, the belief that it's not serious enough. There also is, in many cases, the cultural stigma and the lack of representation that deepen the silence. Now, a lot of these struggles don't start in school. And so it is important that we can talk about where they begin and how we can break the cycle. So, moving to breaking the cycle, to find solutions to this dilemma, it is important that we look further into the causes and discuss the impact of trauma. Before I dive deeper into some of the cases, I do want to open up the space again to allow you to share kind of what you believe from your experiences that are causes of mental illness. So this is again same QR code, same website. We'll give some time for that. Genetics, yeah, trauma, use, drugs, adverse life experiences. Yes, I will be talking about that in a bit as well. Unstable households, yeah, poverty, poverty, unsafe environment, use, trauma, environment. Yeah, back to this. Yeah, so thank you for sharing. Here we have some other causes. A lot of them we did mention. So, as someone mentioned, genetics, childhood trauma, could also be unhealthy habits, the environment, such as like the household that someone might have grown up in, and negative thoughts, stress. And as someone mentioned, adverse experiences. So, when talking about trauma and the causes of mental illness, it is crucial that we discuss adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And ACEs does refer to traumatic events that occur before the age of 18, and it is scored out of 10. This includes abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And so, for abuse, it can include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. And also, ACEs could also refer to physical or emotional neglect. And then, with household dysfunction, there could be a relative that deals with mental illness, or someone that's incarcerated, a mother that's treated violently, or substance abuse present in the household, and also the divorce of parents. Now, ACEs is a topic that I don't think is talked about as much as it should be, especially considering how common it is. So 64% of adults experience at least one type of ACE. 1 in 6 adults experience 4 or more types of ACEs. And it is estimated that about 21 million depression cases could have been potentially avoided by preventing ACEs. So, what impact does this have? Here we have some possible risk outcomes, and it's split up into behavioral and physical and mental health. So, in terms of behavioral outcomes, it can lead to a lack of physical activity, smoking, alcoholism, drug use, or missed work. And we're talking about physical and mental health, can lead to severe obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts, STDs, heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, and broken bones. Now, ACEs is scored out of 10. So the higher the ACEs score, it correlates with an increased risk of mental illness, substance abuse, and violence. But ACEs are not destiny, and they do require intervention. Now, as I've made it clear during my presentation, I value vulnerability and creating these safe spaces to have these conversations. And that's why I do want to share that I personally have an ACEs score of 8 out of 10. Now, this puts me at the high risk end, but thankfully, as I've talked about in my story, I've taken the necessary steps early in my life so that I can work to prevent those outcomes. I started therapy, as I talked about, learned more about mindfulness, and I've really been working on my healing journey. And so, trauma, as I've talked about, has played a significant role in my life and shaped my emotional development. But I've stayed resilient and I've learned the importance of healing and using my story as my strength. My advocacy has become part of my recovery, and it's a gift that I want to give to others. All based on my personal experiences and what I've learned, I do want to share some tangible steps for change. Here is another question to kind of just share, and I invite you all to share your responses about any strategies you've seen schools use or that they should use in regards to mental health of students. Provide mental health first aid training. Yes, it's very important. Invest in school health professionals. Yes. Provide trauma informed therapists and have a crisis identification and management plan. Yes. Have strong connections to local community health services. Usually they don't do anything until the youth is in risk. Yeah, it's true in a lot of cases. So it's so important that we start having these conversations about how we can support students, whether in school, at home. So it is important. Incorporate MA, mental health and sexual assault coping curriculum as being mandatory. Yes, that's very important. Provide a safe space for students and reduce stigma. Uh, access students with risk behavior risk factors before crisis occurs. Yes, it's all good answers. Yeah, so let's kind of talk a bit more about this. So there, a lot of the responses that were given, I'll talk about as well. I'm going to dive deeper a bit. So what can schools do? They can promote the mental health and well-being of students. They can provide safe and supportive environments, and they can connect students and families to mental and behavioral health services. And so when we do consider how much time kids spend in school throughout the year, it is crucial for schools to give students these necessary resources and education on mental health, because poor mental health can interfere with the student's ability to learn, and it can affect the classroom as well, which is their behavior, their school engagement, and their peer relationships. So here I do want to share 4 evidence-based strategies that I've learned through my experience as a peer educator and also as a mental health advocate. And these are mental health literacy, promoting mindfulness, enhancing connectedness, and staff well-being. So let's start by talking about mental health literacy. And mental health literacy refers to having the knowledge and understanding of mental health. It's also about having the skills that help people reach out for support when they need it. Now, it is crucial that we set preventative measures through peer led modeling programs. Teen leaders model and teach healthy behaviors and coping skills. It's important to have that. It's also important to have interactive sessions where we share strategies and personal mental health experiences and really allow students to learn how to seek help from trusted adults during difficult times. Now, peer led programs create safe spaces for youth to learn and share. It empowers them to lead change. And as a primary prevention tool, these programs can address trauma and mental struggles before they escalate and disrupt harmful norms before they take root. Through my work, as I've mentioned, with No Abuse and its own crew, I have seen how the youth can and want to lead change. So it really is crucial that we start having these conversations at a young age and promote awareness of harmful behaviors and mental health. And now this approach has been found to increase positive attitudes about coping with challenging situations, to increase the acceptability of asking for help, and to increase students' perception that adults can provide support related to mental health. Now, the next strategy is promoting mindfulness and being fully aware of your thoughts and feelings in a moment without judging them or negatively reacting to them. Now, this can help students manage stress in their everyday lives and regulate their emotions and behaviors. Now, we can promote mindfulness through classroom-based education, through short daily sessions and lessons on stress and self-regulations, through mindful breathing, meditation, and yoga, group discussions on real life application and emotional awareness. Now, with No Abuse, I educated students on dealing with emotions such as immediate and pent up anger and different calming strategies that they could use. Now, this classroom based approach has been found to decrease anxiety, decrease depressive symptoms, decrease negative coping behaviors, and to increase positive coping behaviors. Next is enhancing connectedness. Now, enhancing connectedness refers to each student's belief that adults and peers in school care about their learning and about them as individuals. It's a sense of being cared for, being supported, and belonging at school. Diverse students, including students of color, students with disabilities, and students who identify as LGBTQ, have increased risks of experiencing feelings of social isolation or alienation at school. So it really is important that we have this connectedness because it can protect and promote students' mental health and well-being. Now, relationship building programs are key for enhancing connectedness. It's important that we have initiatives that connect students with peers and staff. It's important to have regular two-way dialogue between families and schools, and to have training for teachers and parents on building trust and belonging students. It's also crucial that the classroom and school-wide efforts are tailored to diverse students' needs. This approach has been found to decrease internalizing behaviors like feelings of anxiety, withdrawal, and depressive symptoms. Now, staff well-being is also crucial. K-2 through 12 careers have the most burnout, and we must prevent secondary trauma. Teachers and principals are more likely than other workers to report burnout and symptoms of depression. They're also less likely to say that they feel resilient, that they can bounce back when bad things happen. Putting school-based programs in place that support the mental health of teachers and staff can improve the school climate and promote student mental health and success. Now, we can promote staff well-being through mindfulness-based training. This includes kind of helping teachers acquire the skills and the tools to manage stress and emotional fatigue, to have flexible formats for professional development, and to really provide and uplift skills to identify emotions and respond with mindfulness. This approach has also been found to decrease anxiety, decrease depressive symptoms, decrease stress, and increase well-being. Now, supporting student mental health is a community effort, and it requires all of us. Change starts with a conversation, compassion, and courage. And as I previously talked about, ACEs and its impact, this video is going to discuss kind of more things that we can do as a community to prevent mental illness and other risks. Let me just quickly make sure that you could hear the video.
Hi, this is my neighborhood. I grew up in this building. This is a great community now, but it's had its share of problems. When I was a kid, our community had high unemployment, a lack of resources for families, and lots of kids hanging out with no adult supervision. You might have heard about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. ACEs are traumatic events in childhood, like abuse and neglect, that can increase risk for future problems. But they don't have to. The good news is that ACEs and their consequences can be prevented. Take me, for example. I was at risk for ACEs, and despite all the things that put me at risk, some pretty incredible people helped make sure that I wouldn't become another statistic. Come on, I'll show you around. That's Jackson. He's a cool kid. His dad left when he was 2, and his mom works 2 jobs. I hang out with him every Thursday night and help him with his homework. Sometimes we grab ice cream. It's fun. Plus, he has another adult role model to learn from and trust. That's Mr. Martino. When I was a kid, he let me help him at the store sometimes after school when my parents were working late. He did that for a bunch of us. My dad actually found his job as a mechanic because of Mr. Martino. This helped our family in so many ways. Not only did my dad have a steady paycheck, which eased his stress about paying rent and buying necessities like food and clothes, but he was also a lot nicer to me, my brother, and my mom once he started working a job that made him feel good about himself. When communities come together, they can do so much to prevent ACEs. Mr. Martino and other local business owners put together a series of career workshops to help people like my dad find work. My mom also got a job with a company that allowed her to work from home and spend more time with me and my brother. Mariana has just gotten out of a class about handling challenges of single parenting. The clinic offers free childcare so Mariana's daughter, Ella, can play while Mariana's in class. The class helps parents like Mariana develop positive parenting skills, not just for babies and toddlers, but for teenagers too. This is another way our community has come together to give families the resources they need, and just one more way to prevent ACEs. This was my school, Riverside Middle, right in the heart of town. These kids are here for a sponsored summer camp. This community-supported program helps families with affordable, quality childcare and helps kids get tutoring and learn life skills. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time at this school all year long. There was one counselor, Miss Greer, who I remember more than anyone. She was a really good listener. Miss Greer helped me and my brother get involved in after-school activities like baseball and soccer. Our coaches were super nice and were mentors to us, Staying after school for practice kept us and a lot of other kids out of trouble. When schools help take responsibility for preventing ACEs, everybody wins. My life could have gone in a completely different direction. Studies show that ACEs can have long-term negative effects on kids' health and well-being that may last into adulthood and even continue in future generations. But by people and groups taking action, ACEs can be prevented. In fact, there are 5 known strategies that help stop ACEs before they even start. You can implement them in your own community, just like we did. How? By strengthening economic support for families, by changing social norms to support parents in positive parenting, by providing quality care and education early in life, by enhancing parenting skills to promote healthy child development, and by intervening to lessen harms and prevent future risk. So, now you know my story, and you've seen the prevention strategies in my community that helped me beat the odds. I had healthy relationships with my family and friends. I learned how to take care of myself and make good choices. And today, I'm a mentor to other kids who need some extra help so they don't become an ACEs statistic. Safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments are essential to prevent child abuse and neglect and to assure that all kids reach their full potential. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Banana split? You got it.
Okay. Yeah, so I really like that video because it really does highlight how we as a community can kind of ensure that we really support kids and their future. We support families, we support students, staff. So this is really important. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, so what can you do today? So here are some steps, kind of more tangible things that we could start doing in our daily life. Now, share your story to break stigma. As I've talked about with my story, I know the impact that storytelling has, and really being able to kind of share your experience with mental health and stigma is a way that we can create that safe space for others to feel as if they can also share their story, to really support vulnerability and to show compassion and empathy. Another step is to start a peer-led mental health initiative. Now, it's really important that we support students at a young age in school and start having those conversations with them and normalize those conversations. Another step that we can do is to really practice daily mindfulness or check-ins. Well, this could be with other people or with ourselves, because it is important that when we support other people, we do ensure that we're also supporting ourselves, that we're also checking in with ourselves and making sure that we don't get overwhelmed or overstressed with different work. It's also important to advocate for trauma-informed training in your school or community. As I talked about with the impact trauma has, it really does have a big impact, whether it's trauma at an early age, there's adverse childhood experiences. So trauma really can impact people in different ways at different ages. And so it really is crucial that we have that training in schools and in our communities and our families so that the people that kind of go through that trauma know the resources and have the help and the support system they need to really overcome that. And so that's kind of the end of my presentation. I do have a few final slides. Here I have a QR code for a feedback form that I have, but yeah, this helps me grow this work. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's session. Your feedback does help me kind of refine this message and make sure that I can expand the impact and share it with other people. So I'll give a few seconds for that. I will be showing this QR code again at the end. And I'm also want to share this. I'm really proud to share that on Sunday, I actually ran the New York City Marathon. It's my first ever marathon to raise awareness for youth mental health. And so I ran for Minding Your Mind, which is a nonprofit that provides mental health education and suicide prevention programs for young people. As I talked about earlier, it is important that we have that peer education as a preventative measure. So they go into schools, they talk to kids, they talk about the real stories, talk about kind of the different ways that kids can take care of their mental health, kind of coping skills, having those conversations, and really normalizing that in the community, which, as I talked about in this presentation, is really crucial so that we can support students um, from an early age. And so I'm still fundraising. Have about 1,300 left to reach my goal before the end of November. So any help, any donation of any size, any help sharing really does support a lot and helps support these programs that are needed for schools and for students. Um, so here I do have the QR code and the website that you can go to if you want to donate, share, or learn more. We'll be showing this QR code again at the end, but I'll give some time for anyone to scan it or to go to the website. Yeah, so thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I'm really grateful for the incredible opportunity to share my story and to lead this important discussion. So here again, I have the QR codes for the fundraiser, the feedback form, and then I have another QR code for kind of my information if you wanted to connect, wanted to learn more. It should have my email and my LinkedIn as well. And so with kind of the 8 minutes we have left, I do want to open the space if anyone has any questions or comments, anything they want to share. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your history. I am the mother of the daughter who has mental illness, and you say talking about culture.
Yeah.
She was in the hospital. She has suicidal thoughts. She married. There's something that's affecting me at some point is that her husband is a wonderful man, but
Mhm.
he doesn't understand what is mental illness, because in his own family never was nothing like that. I can't,
Yeah.
yeah, how you think in your life or the other kids' life affect that the other people doesn't, because they no support, because they don't understand what is the people coming from.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. I mean, I grew up like my family, they immigrated from Ecuador. So grew up in a Latino household where they don't really talk about mental health as kind of something that's real. It's kind of just, oh, like you're going through a tough time, just push through it. It's not a real feeling. Like, and so it is difficult when you're in those kind of communities or those cultures where there is that kind of stigma or like prejudice or kind of stereotype about what mental health is, whether there's like not a belief in it. And I think that's why it's really important that we have these types of presentations where like using storytelling, because when you have real stories of real people from those communities, from diverse backgrounds, from diverse experiences, it really shows that it's not just happening to one group of people. It's not just happening to one family, to one neighborhood, to one state, country. It really is a global issue. And so having these stories creating those safe spaces where people can come, like even if they're not themselves sharing their story, but they're hearing other people share their story, and something somebody else might say resonates with them, it really starts, it starts to have other people like start thinking about that. It like plants the seed in their mind so that they can start eventually having those thoughts, having those conversations with other people about what mental health is, even if it's just a simple thing like, okay, I didn't have a good day today. I felt overwhelmed. I felt stressed. I'm feeling sad, lonely. Like those things are also mental health. And so, how do you deal with that? Do you like listen to music? Do you go exercise? Like those are coping skills. Those are ways that you deal with those mental struggles. And so mental health might be something that's present in their life, but they just have never associated a word to it. And so I think just having those conversations, having those discussions, uh, having those spaces where people are sharing real stories, it like even if it's like a small thing, it does start to kind of get the ball rolling so that you can eventually overcome that stigma and people start addressing it for what it is, that it is a real issue and it's not something that uh, is like made up. But it is tough when it's something that someone didn't really grow up learning about or hearing about, and it's their first time. So it is something that's difficult. Yeah, I understand.
Thank you so much for your words.
Yeah,
You are wonderful, wonderful human.
thank you. Thank you.